systems with a minor in interactive and social media, and I'm a junior.
Hi, my name is Arnold Lopez, and studying game design, and with a small focus on game programming.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm graphic design at Iris.
Hi, I'm Iris. I'm graphic design and I'm a senior.
I'm Caitlin. I'm PR and advertising with a minor in interactive and social media, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm David. I'm a junior. I'm studying interactive and social media.
I'm Nick, studying IT, senior, and.
All right. Well, so as you can tell, we've a wide array of folks, and they're in terms of what their interest levels and experiences are. But we've all been really pleased using the book. We've been really happy to use it. We've got a lot of folks who are graphic design oriented, and we knew heading into solving these problems of design and prototyping that Photoshop, the Adobe question was going to be a looming question from the beginning. So we're so excited that you were able to compile the book for us. You want to talk a little bit about what your inspiration was for building it?
Oh, sure. So, let's just to give you some background. I've been interested in the whole where Photoshop fits in the scheme of web design for quite some time. I've done web design for, I can't even count how many years now, but ever since I was back in school, and it's just been something that's kind of polarizing in our. I think you probably read in chapter 2 or 3 or whatever it is that everybody kind of has a stance more or less on whether or not you should use a specific tool in web design. So giving some talks on this topic. I speak at some conferences kind of around the country and even overseas and such. But the thing was that Adobe Press, which is the publisher and somebody that's kind of a division of Peach Pit and Pearson, they had somebody contact me and was like, hey, we've seen your talks, we think that it's some pretty intriguing content, do you think you'd be able to put it into a book format? And I kind of jumped on that because there's just so many things that you get every now and then, little pieces now and then that you just want to get out of your head and be like, wow, there's all these cool tools and tricks and tips that I'm sure could make somebody's life easier. So that was kind of the impetus for writing the book.
So now, did you keep notes for yourself as you were going along and doing your work? How did you pull on your memory from all those tips and tricks, or did you keep an Evernote file, or what was your secret for keeping all that stuff that you find?
No, so I'm probably the most unofficial author that there is. It's a crazy learning experience just trying to write a book in that long format. I think the original scope was 288 pages. I was pretty terrible at just kind of making an outline or making a running notes or anything like that. A lot of it was from memory, and a lot of it just kind of fit in the bigger story. As much of a instruction and textbook kind of thing that it is, it really to me was, how do I tell the story from my experience of, how we got here, all the way to, doing some prototyping, doing, kind of taking you through, one of my processes, and so there's really no official note-taking, evernoting, or anything like that. It just kind of all came, as I started to build the book.
It was really handy for us as we were working through they're in the midst of pitching their final projects for this evening. We've had half of them go, and we'll do the other half after we get off the call from you. But we talked a lot about the spectrum of from lo-fi to high fidelity and what that means, and that was a really useful framework for us in terms of thinking, because in the 10-week class that we had, there was no way that we were going to meet some of the demands of what a fully pixel-perfect prototype looks like in a responsive context, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to let them have the chance. I know you've got some back and forth over Twitter, some questions that you answered. I really appreciate that you were willing to do that. But if you guys have things that you wanted to ask him aside from that, now is the time to maybe talk to him specifically about that. I did like your slide deck, by the way, and I will push that back out again too from
Okay. I'm glad. Thanks.
Yeah. So what kind of questions do you guys have for them before we? Yeah, just jump right in.
What's the most challenging part in your design process?
Yeah, so I believe the question was, what's the most challenging part in the design process?
Yep.
Yeah, that's you could pick any number of things. I think the part where you start to make pages out of a system is the toughest. I think it's natural and kind of maybe easier to sit in a static tool like Photoshop and come up with some ideas, and I mean that's kind of neat and something that we're all as designers used to. But when you have to go from that to building components to building, if you're trying to make a system out of your design and put that into the browser, um, there's a lot of decisions that still need to be made because to vet out all that in Photoshop would be pretty hard. So from an internal standpoint of, what do I wrestle with the most, it's that transition of, okay, I have all these ideas in Photoshop, now I need to make them into some system, and then that system has to become cohesive pages, and sometimes it doesn't always translate. So, that whole transition from the one to the other, the ideas to the system to the page, that's it takes it's going to take a couple times going through it, and until you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that's where I struggle, or not where I struggle the most, but where I have the most challenges.
Would you say that the work that you do, that you have done in the past, you're talking about it takes a little struggle, you kind of have to sort of get into a rhythm of it. Would you say that the work that you do, the use cases inform each other moving forward? Like each new project you have under your belt then means something significant in terms of what you do for the next project and so forth and so on?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. It builds confidence, I think. Knowing that you can, uh, you've gone through one process, you've seen where the pitfalls are. I mean, I've gone through so many different iterations of workflow that we try something and the result might have been great, but we spent a ton of time on it, and we burned a lot of money doing that. So there's inefficiencies that you pick up on, and you just kind of keep in the back of your head for next time. And you say, like I bet you we can do this faster. I bet you we can do this more efficient. So yeah, they definitely do evolve. Kind of your standpoint. I think the most important part of maybe what you're asking too is that you don't ever, in my stance, my personal stance, is that you should never come to one process and just feel like, wow, I nailed it. I'm done. Like this is how I'm going to do every project. Because the moment you get, kind of comfortable, to a T with, how you go from one thing to the next, is when you get in some pitfalls of, man, I'm not really solving, particular problems for, each different client, or, things might just not be as efficient or, as original. So it's kind of, you have to get comfortable with just doing it different every time or slightly different every time.
Yeah. What else? Other questions you guys want to throw?
What are you working on now?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I can tell you. So two things. One thing, I mean, they're both not public knowledge, so that's good. I'll give you a little in on that. So when I wrote the book, I was working for a company that's right outside of you guys in Aurora. They're called Web Solutions, WSOL, and I was working as their interface designer on a small team. So since then, and I want to say just about a month now, I started a new job here in Syracuse, working with three other people, so very small. It's a company called Adjacent. So what we're doing now, the first thing that I got kind of my onboarding was, hey, like it's time to refresh our website, and we're kind of tabbing me to lead that effort. So that's what I've been kind of consumed with lately is just kind of getting used to the new digs and trying to um, you know infuse my perspective and all that, and bring it to the area. So that's one thing that I've been doing. The other thing that's under wraps, well, I'll let you know about, is if you're familiar, one of the chapters covered it, and I might have mentioned it somewhere in the book, but I started a site a while ago called Photoshop Etiquette. So, and that's just a best practice guideline kind of document. So, one thing that I'm doing there this year is I'm going to revamp that whole site, and hopefully by the time September rolls around, I will publish that, and it'll be kind of an updated Photoshop etiquette, because at the time it was with the full comp kind of workflow in mind, and so much has changed since then. So this will have a kind of a new twist on it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm familiar with the guys at Web Solutions. So I've worked with them when I worked at Judson University. They came in and handled some of our Ectron properties while I was there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. We were talking a lot about, speaking of Ectron and content management systems, the fact that it's not possible, no one designs in a vacuum. You've got all these different things that come into play, and you can create these, style tiles and all these component libraries, and then find out very quickly that, oh, none of that's going to work because we have this new CMS on the back end. I wonder how you approach those challenges in your work, and what kind of advice you might have.
Yeah, there's limitations to each CMS, and it's hard. Especially when I was at WSOL, I'll try to suggest some design or some component of a design, and kind of be told, hey, there's really no good way of making that editable. So it's one of those things where I think having a good designer-developer relationship, if you're not going to be the one kind of controlling all the CMSing and all that, it's good to be as familiar as you can with the CMS like WordPress or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, having a pretty good relationship with whoever is the developer or developers, and letting them know, hey, this is something that I want to try. Is this, something you can support? That back and forth is pretty healthy.
Yeah, it's so hard there are a lot of one-man shops, especially when you first start out, but it's so hard nobody does all of it alone, so you got to build those relationships early on. That's part of what we try to get with each other, working as a cohort. These folks that you're sitting next to are the people that could be giving you jobs in 2-3 years. So.
Yeah.
What other questions do you have for him, or anything like that?
I guess simply, how do you break down? We talked about in class, just UX, UI. What's your key separator for the two? If you see them as one, or just pretty. How do you break those down more?
Yeah, great question. So the question is, how do I break down the differences, or the primary difference between user experience and user interface? I think when this was a pretty hot topic, a year or two ago, I had a better answer. I might have forgotten that answer, but I think it's the interface isn't the experience necessarily, so they're not one and the same. But the interface can certainly inform the experience. So a poorly designed interface, buttons that aren't usable or you can't even find them, links that aren't apparent. Anything that's faulty about the interface can obviously make for a pretty faulty experience. So where I guess I would draw the line is the experience, that you're trying to design more or less is something that you can use interface elements for, but there's so many principles of usability and research and conversion things that it goes pretty far beyond just what hits the screen. So yeah, I think interface can be part of the experience, but they're not exactly the same.
That's a good answer. That works for us.
Okay.
Well, the other one's probably on the interweb somewhere. We could probably find it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So, if you guys have, while you're thinking, I'm going to interject another question. You talked a lot about, in some of the Twitter back and forth, obviously we want to make sure there are good career components to what we do in the class and that people take some good career advice out of it. And you talked a lot about making sure to connect with communities of designers early on and how important that was, and that you kind of, wanted to really stress that. Did that play into, if you don't mind me asking, your ability to relocate, as far as going to where you are right now is concerned? I mean, how did you manage that? Because I know these folks, you guys probably don't want to live in Chicago forever, right? You probably want to be able to get to where you want to go. And so I'd love to hear you talk about that. I don't know if you guys would like to hear him talk about that too.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that because I have a heart for community now that I didn't when I first started out, and I wish that I did. Um, so I moved up to Syracuse years ago. So I've probably been living here like 5 or 6 years, and I've been working remotely for WSOL. So I've never actually lived out there, but yeah. So it's community and making connections is so important because unlike being a lawyer where your expertise isn't necessarily shared, it's something that's like a secret sauce. Unlike being in the medical field where you have to like pay for information and it's not just kind of open source. Something that captivated me early on was the fact that being in the design field, everybody just kind of shares what they know. Nobody's kind of you know you can tell pretty quick if somebody's trying to keep their process to themselves and things like that, and you see that they really don't fit in our community very well. So that was very appealing to me, is that there's no secrets out there. I can tell you I could break down everything about my workflow, and I don't expect you to have the same result, and it's kind of cool because we each have different ways of thinking about things, and the design and creative process takes us different places. So in terms of your career and getting started and making connections, I would just say that community opens you up for a lot of that. Being able to attend conferences, attend events, attend things going around Chicago. I know that there's some folks out there that put on bigger and smaller events, meetups, and dribble things or whatever it is. Find those out, and even if you're not the most forward kind of social person, just go there and hang out, and you'll see that people are really open, really, inviting and inclusive, and hopefully it's a pretty good experience to get your feet wet and just seeing what people do. I wish I had some connection when I started out of somebody doing exactly what I wanted to do. It's pretty important to find a mentor or find somebody that can show you kind of the ropes of what it is to be a designer.
Mentor, I'm glad you used the word mentor. Absolutely, yeah. What do you guys got for our guests? I don't know. Can you see, Debbie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do you challenge yourself before every project?
That's a good question. How do I challenge myself before every project? So on a number of levels, I will, from a very general level, I'll try to do more of something that I haven't done in terms of a role. So on a small team like I'm on now, I might try to sit in on more conversations about copywriting, or sit in on more conversations about just how we get the work, or that the stuff that I don't really know, because all that kind of peripheral stuff outside design is going to give you a better better influence on what you should be designing, and better business perspective and all that. So I try to challenge myself on that level. Design wise, I try to come up with things that are come up with designs that aren't exactly the way I approached it last time. To really challenge myself to understand a business, understand a client's needs, and say, okay, what's the problem they're really trying to solve? And that can't always be rotating hero image on the homepage and 3 blurbs of news copy, like, that those templated kind of approaches are easy to fall into. So absolutely have to challenge yourself every time to say, what's the unique problem that they have, and how can design solve that? Um, and it's nothing you can. Like, it's something that has to be thoughtful and original every time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
I have another question.
He's got a follow-up.
Um, After you wrote your first book, do you have another book idea in mind?
That's a really good question. Not one that I mean, if I had to do it again, I certainly, the value is there. Like, I know the value of writing a book is worth it. But at the same time, it took a long time and a lot of resources, a lot of long nights, a lot of early mornings and all that. So it'd have to be something that I really felt strongly, that I could, add to the conversation. I feel like this book did that on a lot of levels. Kind of got some of my talks and perspective out there. I don't think the landscape has changed enough where I could totally do something new. I think I'd be reiterating a lot of what I've already said. But yeah, it's a commitment, and it's a lot to kind of take into account before you get started. So yeah, I'd probably hold off until the next responsive design technique or something totally changes the way that we look at something.
Awesome. Anybody else? So what is your prediction for what that next big thing is? I don't know if you want to go out on that limb or not.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think the device and screen proliferation more or less has, been something of an unknown. We have so many different devices and screens, and I think something you'll start seeing is, how do we design for, the secondary screen experience? What I mean by that is, there's been a lot of talk about, you're watching something on TV, but you're also, sitting on the couch with your phone. So how can those two things relate to one another in a meaningful way to you? So how do we design experiences where you're sitting watching a TV show and you're also, looking down at your phone to get information about that show or engage with that show somehow? Those kind of interactive experiences between screens, or kind of cross platform experiences. That could be something. I don't know that it's a technique for web design and specifically, but there's always going to be those kind of challenges, and kind of the how do we more or less take technology where it's at and where it's going, and make it beautiful, and make it something that you want to kind of immerse yourself in. So that's my best guess. I don't know layout wise or anything like that where we're going.
Has anybody asked you to design anything for the Internet of Things or for wearables or anything like that, like an Apple Watch, or have you toyed around?
Yeah, no, I don't own. I have like a Fitbit and stuff like that. So I mean, like wearable tech, I think I have some things, but no screens that are on refrigerators or watches or washing machines and all that jazz. I haven't dabbled in that sphere yet, and I think that's mainly out of my interests in kind of where the client work has been. Um, but I don't think it's always going to be that way. I think the best perspective you can have is, especially if you're going to design for screens and you're going to design websites and things like that, um, man, responsive is it's not just a technique, but it's a methodology, because what you're ideally saying is, this site, no matter what it shows up on, is going to look optimal. So whether that's going to be a small, tiny screen like a watch, or it's going to be a huge touch screen, or something like that, a huge billboard, whatever it is, it's going to adapt to its screen pretty well and pretty seamlessly. So, um, having those philosophies, I think prepares you for the Internet of Things.
Yeah, I mean that's a good argument for the value of component libraries and these sorts of Bibles of things that say, look, it doesn't matter what screen it's displaying on. This is what color it's going to be. This is whether or not it's going to be flat. Those kinds of things are worked out.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, and I want to say thank you, and I know that they want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you so much. I was totally taken back, when you reached out and said that you guys had taken my book and, kind of used it in your class. I'm definitely honored about that. The book thing for me has just been a really enjoyable ride, and it's, I by no means want to diminish my credibility, but, it's pretty humbling that you would take that for your, your curriculum and your course. So I really appreciate that, and certainly if you have any questions or anything like that, I don't pretend to be the authority on everything, but I've been around the block a time or two with some of this stuff, so I'd be more than happy to give my perspective. And I'm confident you guys are gonna rock it in each of those fields that you say that you're in and want to go to. So whatever I can do to help get you there, just let me know.
Awesome, thank you. I'd love for you to be able to see some of the work that they put together out of this. I'll probably try and get it to you in some way over email or something. If that's
Oh,
okay.
that would be great. I would love to see it.
And like I said with the book, it was right time, right place. It's so hard when you're finding curriculum to find something that is relevant to what's going on right now. And like I said, this just hit the nail on the head for us in terms of the problems we knew that we were going to be encountering as folks going into the marketplace. So good timing.
Great. Very happy to hear it.
All right, if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know.
Okay. Well,
All right.
do.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Say goodnight to your kids for us. Bye.
Okay. Take care.